Hello world, welcome to the Festive Tech Calendar. I'm Eva. I'm really happy to be here today. And I'm here with Stefan. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine and super excited about our session today during the third day of the Festive Tech Calendar 2022. And yeah, what are we about to do today?
Well, first of all, we are so pleased to be part of the Festive Tech Calendar this year. There's some really cool projects and a great speakers, fabulous content, and it's all for a good cause. So the Festive Tech Calendar generally is bringing communities together and also raising money for a charity called Missing People. So they reunite families in the UK. So first of all, if you have any money to spare this Christmas, please consider donating to the cause. Giving to the cause and donating on the Just Give page that they have here. Yeah, your help is much appreciated. But now a little bit more about us. Stefan and we've been friends for a while, and in mid-October, we decided to do a project together. I am super new to coding. I've been at it for about a year, whereas Stefan has a lot more experience. I think it's, 10, 15 years now?
In
Something
.NET,
like that.
it's 10 years, yeah.
Yeah, 10 years, and you've won some really cool awards and given some great lectures. So he's just a general hero, and I'm more of the novice. um, yeah,
Well,
and
I guess this is time. So let's talk about in 10 years again. I'm quite positive then you will be on the other side, more or less.
yeah, hopefully. Well, fingers crossed. But together we're streaming once a week on Twitch and on YouTube, and we're building stuff together. We're building fun projects, and also obviously when we come across really interesting topics or like questions arise from my part, we also dive into that and we sort of explain that. So it is slightly educational, but also super fun. And yeah, that's our YouTube channel. We called our stream "To Code or Not to Code" because I'm a huge Shakespeare fan. So obviously that's a quote from one of his most famous plays. And I asked in one stream once if anybody knew which play this quote is from. Messaged in the comments, and no one knew because we're streaming from Austria and no one knows that play there, I guess. But maybe today is a more international crowd. So if you know, don't leave me hanging. Write it in the comments and make me happy. But we also wrote it in like a Cody way, which was also actually our first session where we were speaking about like logical operators and the different ways to write or in code and what the subtle differences were, which was also a really cool start into our journey together. But then we decided to do a more Christmassy project, which is called the AdventQRlendar. And it works kind of like an advent calendar. You've got 24 doors. It's a bit DIY, so you need to put it together yourself. But behind each door, you will find a QR code that you can fill with whichever links you like. So you can have, I don't know, funny memes or like Christmas songs, cat videos, whatever you like, really. And so in the application, yes, you can see right here, you can sort of, if you click on the QR codes page, you can fill the QR codes in with your own links. So maybe Shakespeare quotes would be a good one as well for me. Yeah, we also had a fill button so you can sort of show it quicker. So we filled it with a couple of links now. And if you go back to the AdventQRlendar page, you can kind of see that you have the two pages, of like the front page and the back page with the QR codes. That's what it looks like. And then you can print it out with a wonderful print button at the top. And this is where it gets really DIY-y, but who doesn't like a little DIY around Christmas time, right? So that's sort of what it looks like. And then you print it, and then you have it like this, 2 pages, one front page, one back page, and then you need to cut out. So you've got the little white lines there. You need to cut them out right there. I also have a black and white version, so you see what it looks like in black and white, and then or in grayscale, and you kind of you cut out the little doors like this. Obviously, it looks a lot prettier in color. And if you've cut them all out, you stick them together. So you apply like glue, like in between the QR codes here. Make sure you don't. There we go. in between the QR codes. Make sure you don't glue the doors down, because that's then very unfortunate for the person you give the calendar to. And then if you glue it together, it looks like this. And it's beautiful. And if you look at the number one, for example, if you open it up, here you have a QR code and you can scan it. I'm going to scan it with my phone and see what lies behind the little QR code. Oh, so let's see. And where does it lead to? The keynote poem for the Festive tech calendar. So that's obviously also something you can fill your calendar with, the content of this tech calendar event, if you like, whatever you like, really. Yeah, so let's have a look at the code. How did we build it?
Ooh, that's a that's a great segue. Your enthusiasm is really infectious in a good way. In a good way.
Fabulous.
So we built this with Blazor, and Blazor is a .NET based framework for web applications, and Blazor has two modes. We can either build something in server side, so all the rendering of the pages and the sites of the pages of the site is done on the server and then sent via I think gRPC to the client. Or what we chose is the WebAssembly version of Blazor, which is entirely client-side. So this is WebAssembly is a rather modern technology that all the major web browsers do support. And you can write C# code instead of JavaScript code in order to run code on the client to a certain degree. If you need browser features, you still are required to write JavaScript, but there is a nice interop between the C# code, which runs then in WebAssembly, and the JavaScript code, and we'll see how we utilize that. And so this is Blazor, and it runs then in the client, in the browser. So everything we see here is rendered on the client. And in the WebAssembly runtime of .NET. So perhaps let's have a bit of look at the code that we wrote. Having a look, we created a couple of pages. For example, our QR codes page. And what we saw that, oh no, sorry, that's the wrong one. It's the QRlendar page, of course, which is like our start into the application, where we do see that we have the shuffle and the print. Oh, we didn't show the shuffle. Let's show this afterwards.
Ah, true.
But we do also have a print button. And what we see here, this is a .razor file. And in Razor, we can write standard HTML, but can also add notations to it that we see like here. We can have an add on click, or also an add, and then after the add, we basically can write C#. So what we see here, this is C# code combined with HTML. So we are creating a table, and then we are iterating through our grid, and for each row in that grid, we iterate through all the columns and then create those 24 boxes. And here we see with the Razor syntax, the combination of HTML and C# code that works really nicely. And in the code editor, in the code editor's highlighting, we can see which parts are C#, which parts are HTML, and we also get full editor support. For example, if I hover this var, we see that this is actually of type door, which is a C# type that we have built, which represents one of those 24 doors. And we can also have a code behind. So here this onClick leads to the method onShuffle. So if I navigate to this method, we will now see that this file is basically called the same name, but it has a .cs suffix, which now tells Blazor that, okay, those two components belong together, and this type is basically the code behind of the Razor file. So this is quite similar to WPF, where we can also have like an XAML-based visual code and a C# back-end kind of a code base. And here we have a type which with fields and methods, and there is our onShuffle and onPrint method that we actually then invoke when we click those buttons. And the cool thing is we can also debug it. So if I hit a breakpoint, if I add a breakpoint here and start the application up again, and now we'll we'll press the shuffle button. We actually hit this breakpoint in debugging mode, and we can step through our code. So we are retrieving the calendar service and stepping on. And we could also, if I would have set a breakpoint here, let's continue. Click shuffle again. See the code that we built in order to shuffle our doors. So we basically get an enumerable range from 0 to the number of doors that we have, which is, oops, can we see that? Oh, just scroll there. Rows by columns, which is 4 by 6. So we end up with our 24 doors. And then order them randomly with the random type. And yeah, so basically we reorder the array that we use in behind with the 24 doors. And every time we click the shuffle button, those doors get different numbers rearranged. And also the QR codes, well, if we have any, let's say we enter a 1 for the first door. And if we go back, we now see that door number 1 has the QR code associated. Here's the number 1, and if we shuffle a couple of times, now the number 1 is here, so it's in the second column, third row, and also second column, third row is our QR code, and so that gets shuffled as well because it uses the same array under the hood. And yeah, I guess this is the basic premise of Blazor to combine the power of C# with a web-based front-end application. And now I'm trying to recall what we all built. So we actually had 9 sessions. So we did stream almost weekly. At the end, also a little bit more often, and we had a total of 9 sessions, each approximately an hour, and we did end up with quite a what's the word? I don't want to say impressive, but yeah, actually,
I think absolutely.
A project I'm very proud of.
I am very proud of it. This is like one of my first projects ever, and it was really interesting because we also had. Yeah, because I also learned a lot about just like general concepts. I guess we had these sessions about nullable warnings last time, was it? Or the time before that? That was really, really interesting. I think you can even see some of it in this file if you want to.
So let's talk about nullables. So we have, okay, so
No,
here's the array that we use in order to fill the defaults.
Oh, wow, okay.
So let's have a look at the code behind of our Razor page. No, actually, let me show this side by side. Perhaps this gives a clearer picture. So let's put the code on the left side and the actual application on the right-hand side. And if we jump to the code behind, we will see that we are injecting. We have here the inject, and we are checking the IJS runtime. So that's the JavaScript runtime, which enables JavaScript interop. And we also inject our QRlendar service. And our QRlendar service, if you have a look at this type, is the type that we showed, which has basically the array of doors. and also the methods such as getting the grid with all the doors, and also the shuffling and the filling with default values. And we did annotate these with, so we didn't annotate these with a question mark. So the question mark annotates reference types in .NET as being potentially nullable. I mentioned reference type because in .NET there is a significant difference between a value type and a reference type. And what we have here, the QRlendar service, this is actually a class. And the class keyword says, okay, this is a reference type. And per default, a reference type is null. And if we try to use any functionality of this property that we have here, if it's null, we will actually crash the application. It will cause a null reference exception. And the compiler will emit warnings if something is or may be null. And so if I remove this suppression here, we are using the null forgiving operator in order to suppress the warning. We did this, I think, in session 7 or 8. And if we actually in the last session, session 9. And if I remove this suppression, we will get a warning, which says the non-nullable property must contain a non-null value when exiting the constructor. However, since we do have the inject attribute here, it is ensured by there is another mechanism in place in order to set this property, which is not within this type. So some other mechanism of Blazor is actually taking care of that. And therefore we know through this inject attribute that this mechanism is setting it, and so we can suppress the warning. And because we have not annotated it with a question mark, we won't get any warnings if we try to dereference it. For example, here, if we try to shuffle, there is no warning. If we would annotate this with a question mark, if I say, okay, this could be null, now the compiler will emit a warning here and tell us, okay, the QRlendar service may be null. It's not necessarily is, but it may be. And now in order to be null safe, we could make a null check. So we could say, if this QRlendar service is not null, put this inside here, and now the warning goes away because we have this check which ensures, okay, this is not null. And with this nullable reference type features, we get warnings if we try to dereference something which may be null.
Yeah, no, that was a super interesting session where we literally went through all the different reasons why these warnings might appear and how you can resolve them. That was super cool. If we have time right now, I would love to go into a little bit of the stuff that I built as well, because obviously this kind of stuff is more where I ask the question and learn and try and learn something. And some of you might not be so impressed by this next part, but I'm very proud of it, because I created the little door shapes that you can cut out later on, which is basically just borders that I put in with Bootstrap, which some of you might know is a really popular framework for people who are not as great with, I guess, CSS, which is us. But I was really happy to use it because, again, like, I'm super new to this, and if I can use it, anyone can. Because they also explain the stuff really well, so it's really good for people who want to learn. And so what we did, because we only wanted 3 sides of the borders.
I will briefly show the Bootstrap page. I'm also putting this into the chat. And basically what we did is going there, hitting documentation, and see how this can be used.
Absolutely, yeah. And you can yes, it's in the chat. Fabulous.
Yeah.
And yeah, so absolutely. So at the beginning, I obviously just put in a border, and then you can put in border top, border bottom, border end, and then you have the same thing, which is the additive way to do it. But I believe in the end used a subtractive way, where you can kind of just go border minus border start minus 0 exactly, and then it's just a lot, I guess, nicer, fancier, and you get exactly the same result. Yeah, and then you have the little cutout doors, which I was very happy that I managed to do. But then it didn't have the right size, so we worked with margin and padding, which is also something that everyone's kind of heard of, but we just couldn't, for the life of us, I guess, remember which one was which. So I'm gonna try and record it for you guys live now. Basically, we have a content, for example, the number that we have in our doors, and the padding is the distance or the spacing between the content and the border, like this exactly, whereas the margin is the spacing between the border and I guess the other items. So in this case, I guess it's our background image or our grid. And so we just played around with this until we had the perfect shape. And yeah, for those of you who were with us in this session, that made me so happy. I felt so accomplished after that day. I felt like a full-on pro coder. And also what we did is we did the print and shuffle button is also something that I took from Bootstrap, which is just perfect. Like they have a couple of buttons. I chose the one I liked. I copy pasted it in and it worked. And again, I was super happy. So this is just, again, like if you're new to coding like myself, absolutely have a look at Bootstrap because you feel so accomplished. And and you also relearn something if you, again, they explain they have a very good documentation and everything's really well explained.
That's the button secondary that we're using here.
Yeah.
Perhaps to show another feature of the .NET ecosystem, it supports hot reload. We can actually change some code and then see the changes live in our running application during debugging. So perhaps let's go ahead and switch a different button. I, of course, don't know the names anymore. Let's go to the documentation.
Yeah.
Let's search for buttons, and
You can just put primary. Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah, okay. Well, if there was a secondary, there should be primary, right? Yeah. So let's try that. So if I change the secondary, let me bring up the page, and if we change the secondary to primary, and if we save that, now the button turns blue.
Woo!
And if I change the secondary to what was the other one? Success.
Success, yeah.
It will turn to green, and we see the changes immediately without restarting the application. And that helped us
a lot.
Tremendously while we built the app, and saved us a lot of time and pain. And we are, I guess, jumping to the margins. So if we change now from the door the padding, like I just change it to something, we will see, okay, now that we removed the top padding, so now it is closer to the border. And if we remove the left padding, it will be on the top left of the content within the border. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe also just to speak maybe a little bit about the numbers within our doors now, because we also changed the font on this, and we just used Google Fonts to do that. We just looked for a Festive font. Again, it was just I really enjoyed sort of working with it, because again, it's very straightforward. You load in the font, you can just use it just like that, and it looked just a lot more Christmassy than just the normal fonts that we found. But then we had the issue that you couldn't really see the numbers with the background image, which was very kind of like this. So it makes it
So we had issues around around this area, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But then, we came across this font shadow, I think it's called, or something shadow, which
the text shadow.
Text shadow. There it is. Yes, and that's actually really interesting, because it actually just kind of duplicates, I guess, the number or the letter or whatever you want to have a shadow, and moves it slightly, and you can move it into all directions at the same time, and then you have kind of like a shadow behind the number, and you can do it in different colors. You can make it super trippy, but we just used black to just make it stand out a little more. So I guess if you try it out,
trippy mode now.
Yeah, let's go into trippy mode. Why not?
Oops, orange. Not that
Oh,
trippy.
no, it's not that trippy anymore. I guess we also made it the shadow a little bit stronger when you had the super trippy mode, and we because we really wanted to see where they sort of appear behind the number. But yeah, you can play around with that, and again, that was a really fun session for me where we just sort of played around with it. And, yeah.
And the text shadow is actually quite powerful. So we can declare multiples of this shadow. And what we did is basically going 1 pixel in all directions. So what Eva said. So we in all 4 directions. So 1 pixel up, 1 pixel down, 1 pixel. I think that's to the left, and 1 to the right. So we had so we're getting this. No, actually, it's not top left, bottom right, but it's the top left, top right, bottom left, and bottom right. Yeah.
Yes.
To get this shadow. Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously, speaking of the background image, that's also from a super useful site called Unsplash. Some of you might know it, but it's just a site full of beautiful free images and photos that you can download and use for your projects. And yeah, we're very grateful for the content creators there as well. We just chose this one for now, but there were so many beautiful pictures to choose from. And again, we just loaded the image in and used it as a background image for our calendar.
And yeah, here we see it how we included it in CSS. And we can declare an URL for the background image, and it points to the image. I guess what we also did, well, we didn't do this live on stream, but off stream just recently, we also included a notice page in order to give attributes to all the third-party content that we use. For example, the link. So this is where you always also find all the links to the Bootstrap. Here is the Google font, the Google Festive font that we use, and also the image, the candle on wooden table. And we are also using the QR coder.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps to jump a little bit into this. So that's a NuGet package. So if we go to the where is it? The dependencies, we see this is available as a net standard 2.0 package. So that means we can basically consume it almost anywhere on .NET projects. And yeah, we're using that in order to create the QR codes. Let's jump to the site and to the code. And unhandled error. Let's reload. Let's fill the QR codes and see them. No, that's interesting. Perhaps I restart the application.
Yeah.
And yeah, in trippy mode.
Trippy mode.
They shall be loaded soon. Yeah, so here they are. And we are using, if we have a look at in the code of the second table that we have, which includes the QR codes, we are again do something similar. We get the grid with all the doors and then create a table row for each row within the grid. And the table data for all the elements in one row, for all the columns. And here we now actually refer to a new component that we called QR code box. So everything in Blazor is a component. We can have special components, which also are pages, so that they get navigatable.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So that we can navigate them too. So we have the QRlendar here, and we have the /QRlendar here. So this is how we can define routes and make so we can navigate to them. But we can also have regular components which do not have this, which are not pages. So we can't directly navigate to these, but we can nest them in pages and other components. And here is now our box. So we create this 24 times. Each of these boxes is this code. And if we actually have a door set, so if there is a QR code, perhaps let's go to let's remove one, or let's remove a couple. And if we jump to the QR codes, so if we actually have, if the door is a set, then we display that, then we render the QR code. And if it isn't, otherwise we just show the number as here. And now we create here the image, which we can also have a reference to, and that is the part that we're using for the JavaScript interop. So we basically grab a handle to this HTML element in the DOM. What does DOM stand for? The document object model, I think. And if we have a look at the code behind of this box, we get a hold of the JavaScript runtime. And so the Blazor components have certain lifetimes, or the pages, no, all of the components have certain lifetime events. And after the render, after the first time we render this component, so this is only run once per lifetime of this component, we grab the so-called collocated JavaScript. So this is again another like sub-component kind of a thing. So we have here our Razor page, our Razor component. We have our code behind, C#. We also have a CSS, which is isolated to this very component. So this CSS is only applied to that and is not visible from any other Razor page or component. And we have the JavaScript. And again, since this is a collocated JavaScript, we can now get a hold of that via the JavaScript engine. And then we actually create the QR code. So via our QR code service, which again is another service that we inject. This is now the QR coder library. We create ourselves a PNG QR code that we then return as byte array, and we wrap that into a memory stream that we can now use in order to get into the JavaScript. And we also pass in this ref element that we saw. And now jumping to the JavaScript, we actually pass in the image. We pass the reference to the image element in the HTML, and also the stream of this image, and can then actually set. We create a blob and then actually set the source of this image to the QR code that we have wrapped in the stream. And if we have a look now side by side, well, let's put them like so. Here is our box. There it is. So here's our image reference that we get in here, and then actually set the source of this image to there. And this here we see how we go from Razor to C# into Java, and all this interop abilities in order to combine those various technologies that we use to bring the QR code live on screen.
And now, when you were explaining this, I saw a couple of different classes that we used, and the one that was really new to me was the partial class. I'd never seen that or worked with that. So why did we use that? I think it was. Well, we used it, I think, on a couple of places, but I think QR code box was.
So let's
one place.
use it at the QR code box, for example. Yeah. So we have. I'll put them side by side. So we have. Actually, let's put this on top. Yeah. No, I wanted to have this on top. Yes. So on the top, we have our actual. So this is one of these boxes. We have our QR code box.razor, so our Razor component. And we have a C# file, which has the very same name, but is just suffixed with C#. And this is now the code behind of this file. But Blazor is already creating a type, a class with the name of this Blazor component. And now we want to basically extend this auto-generated code with our own functionality and want to hook some methods and logic into that process. And this is what we use. This is why we require the partial keyword. And if we have a partial class, we can split implementations of this class into several definitions. It could be also in different files. And in our case, we combine our code here that we have crafted ourselves with the code that the Blazor framework is creating in order to actually do the rendering and all the injection, dependency injection, and all the features that the framework offers to combine this with our code. And so somewhere when we build this, there is another public partial class QR code box that the compiler is creating, and then at the end they are brought together and combined into one. So partial is a typical feature to combine user code with generated code.
Nice, that's super interesting. Yeah.
And I guess since I also mentioned dependency injection, perhaps let's also have a look at dependency injection. So we can use the inject attribute here. So whenever we put something in brackets, are they called brackets? Yes, there are brackets.
Yeah.
This is a so-called attribute. We can also have a look at this at the definition. We see this is the inject attribute that derives from attribute. And this annotates this property for the Blazor framework to use dependency injection on that. So actually now we need the registering part. So dependency injection works like at some location in our code, we register certain types and certain instances that we can then resolve somewhere else. The inject part is the resolving, and our creation part is actually in our main program. So similar to a console application, there is a main program CS, which is the entry point of the application. And in here, we actually do register those components. So we say add singleton and say, okay, we want to register a QR code service and also the QRlendar service. And if I put this up here in the partial class, this is how now basically it gets injected. So we register our QR code service and resolve it here. And per default, Blazor already registers the JavaScript runtime for us. So we don't need to register that. It's already there and we can inject and resolve it anywhere we want.
Amazing. No, that's super cool. I mean, yeah, again, I'm super proud of this application and all the different, not only like lessons that we sort of managed to get out of it, but also just the application as it is. And we also decided that we wanted to make a regular event out of this and sort of refactor it next year as well. So definitely tag along for that as well if you'd like to learn with us. What are some of the components that we decided we wanted to refactor next year?
Well, definitely we want to improve our CSS and our styling in general.
Yes.
Because if we have a look, if we have a brief glimpse at, let's put the the TypeScript of this table. If we have a look at our QRlendar CSS, we see that we use pixels everywhere, and we actually have our table width and height are set to 21 and 29.7 centimeters, which is the DIN A4 format for, it's like the default printing format in our neck of the woods. I think also another popular format I think is the letter format. I'm not sure where this is used. I think it's used in the United States. Is it also used in the UK, I'm actually not sure. What's the default letter format of the UK?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Does anybody know? Any of the viewers from the UK? I guess maybe it's also A4, isn't it? I don't know.
Perhaps. Actually, don't know. I don't know from our neck of the woods, and it's the default format, or the format that we optimized for is A4,
Yeah.
which is the paper that you showed at the beginning. So we can only support that, and there it is, A4 format, yeah. And we optimized for that, so we currently do not support any other printing format, and for that we need to switch from our absolute positioning to relative positioning and be percentage based in order to support multiple or basically actually all the printing formats out there. Well, at least the all portrait printing formats. Perhaps we could also we haven't talked about it, but perhaps we could also do a landscape mode, right?
That would be really cool, because we also, at one point, we spoke about sort of being able to sort of put your own background image into the calendar. So maybe we'll also, if you have like a landscape one and a portrait one, that would be really nice, particularly if you I don't know, want to put your family photo in there or something like that, or like a nice landscape, a nice wintry landscape, something like that. So that I mean, that's already like a really interesting topic that I'd love to learn more about. So I guess we have topics for next year. We're prepared.
Especially, I really need to up my CSS. Well, I learned so much about CSS, but I think it's still like 0.01% or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, well, since we wanted to actually make this a publishable application, publishable web application, we also need to take care and for the next season for actually deploying it to the web, and not like currently you need to build and run it yourself locally in order to be able to print the page. We want to actually publish it as a web app. Also, I'm having a bit look at our cheat sheet. What else we had?
Sorry, cheat sheet time.
So we talked about all of the features that we used from Blazor. We are using collocated JavaScript and JavaScript interop. We're using CSS isolation. Perhaps you can also show there is also, what's the opposite of isolated CSS? I think it's unisolated CSS. So we have one main app.css where we have styling that applies to each and every component and each and every page of the application. And for those parts that we only wanted to have for a specific component, we wanted to do in the isolated CSS. Where the advantage is, if we would have an element, so we could have in two different components, we could have elements or classes, CSS classes, that have the same name, but they could be styled differently because the isolated CSS files of, let's put it here. So the isolated CSS files of those two components they don't interact with each other. So they could have the same name and still be assignable to the component that they're actually being used in. So that's a really cool feature, the isolated CSS. And we talked about the partial classes, nullable reference types. Also, I think this was like on the very, very first session, how we actually do the randomization of the doors that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So let's have a look at one of our services that we inject. It's the QRlendar service, where we have our columns and rows and all of our doors instantiated. So we solved it by having a fixed array, which has our 24 doors, and this never changes. This is always the same. But we have another array which contains the indices. So this will contain the numbers or the indices from, since it's zero based, not from 1 to 24, but from 0 to 23 within this array. And this is also the one that we shuffle and do the via random.shared.next we get random numbers, and then we use the indices in order to access the elements of the doors. So when we get all the rows, we go through the indices and will index the fixed doors in a different order. And yeah, this is how we did the random part of our calendar. And I guess also a future potential optimization could be to make these movable via drag and drop, for example. So
Wow.
we can
That would
arrange
be
them
interesting.
because now if I want to have like one specific order, I need to shuffle potentially a lot.
True. And yeah, and maybe we could also do the 24 box bigger or something like that. I feel like some advent calendars have that.
Ooh,
Or we could
that's
also,
right.
I guess, make the doors in a less perfect, I guess, grid, and just have them a little more random about the advent calendar as well. Something like that. Well, we have lots of ideas. Obviously, if you have ideas, feel free to let us know, and we'll try and include them in the next in the refactoring project of the Advent calendar.
Perhaps that's a great time to also have a look at the repository again. So this is I also put it into the chat. So this is where the code is. It's the very same solution with all of our pages and JavaScript and CSS files. What else do we want to show? Well, what could we show?
Yeah. Good question. Let's go through it one more time. What are the things that we haven't
actually
seen yet?
the navigation part and the printing. Yes, the printing part.
Yes.
That was actually we struggled with that the most, didn't we?
Yeah. Yes, we did.
Since when we print the page, we didn't want to have we only wanted to have the first grid on the first page and the second grid on the second page, but all other elements such as headings, buttons, and this navigation menu, they should not be in the print view.
Yeah.
Do you recall how we solved this?
Okay, so first of all, the funniest thing I believe was when we hit the print button and everything kind of worked, but we didn't have like a background image, and we didn't know why the background image wasn't loaded. And then we realized we were like looked at it for like 15 minutes, and our sessions are only like an hour long, so 15 minutes is a long time in a session to be looking at that kind of stuff. And then we realized you have to put it in the print view. You have to activate it in the printing options, background graphics. That was hilarious. And we literally figured this out like a minute after we went offline. So yeah, that was really, really funny. So I guess we did fix quite a lot, like with like actual size as well, which is something that we fixed quite a lot of stuff there as well. But that's obviously a bit hacky and not kind of how it's supposed to be. But we did sort of have this, I guess, at media print keyword that we put in the code as well, which sort of also is quite powerful actually in enabling us to sort of show only like the items that we want to show, or actually the other way around, sort of kind of collapse or delete, I guess, in the print view, the items that we don't want to show. So yeah, so that we have it at media and print, and we wanted all the headings to be gone as display none. Kind of hides them. The buttons we hid as well, and
more before in the, so we have our the nav. So we have this the navigation here. It's also a component, and we wanted to hide this this menu. So in in the JavaScript of this nav menu, we say if the media is print, we disable this or do not display this class. We're also using the exclamation point important. I'm not sure. Is that a called attribute? Not sure. In order to potentially override if there is like since CSS is cascading, there could be another element which has the same weight to it, and then our display could be overridden with a different value. But with the important, we can give it like, please definitely use this one. What's the word? Give more precedence to this value. And we have this all over the place to ignore the elements that we don't want to print. And eventually also to ensure that we have the line break at the right position, we also have in our QRlendar, we created a class, called it the page break. And again, in the CSS, we have for the media print, we have this page break class where we could say, okay, always break before or after that element in order to ensure that we have a page break. And when we print, actually have the front page kind of a thing on the first page and the back end. It's not the correct terminology, but I love it. On the second page.
Yeah.
And I guess in the future improvements, we could also use I think the media also allows different styling for lower resolution. So if you're on a handheld device, well, I'm not sure if they could print something, but perhaps to PDF.
Yeah, of course. I think if your phone is connected to a printer, I guess you can do it.
Is this okay? I never tried this. Okay, we're definitely gonna try to print from her phone, and then also I'm not sure about the syntax, but we could have a media to do a different styling if the resolution is lower. And then actually, I think we have it at some point with the nav menus. If I there it is. If we make the width rather narrow which is now basically emulating a handheld device. Now we rearrange certain elements, and we could apply this to much more throughout the application. CSS is really, really powerful. This is my biggest takeaway from our 9 sessions.
Amazing. So that was the media print and print view that we implemented. Is there anything else, or do you think we've covered it pretty much?
Let's have a quick look. Yes, perhaps also so we have 2 more pages. We also have a set of instructions, and which mentions all the gotchas, such as, okay, we need to enable background graphics, and also ensure that we don't use duplex modus of the print, because we need 2 separate pages.
Yeah, because that would be unfortunate.
And also, we have a notice page where we link to all the third-party tools and components that we have in use. And I think this is pretty much all of our learnings from building this QRlendar in 2022.
Woo! If you have any questions, absolutely write them in the chat, and we'll answer them as best we can. And obviously, you can always reach us on Twitter or on any of our other streams. We always love to hear from you guys and get your input. And it makes it all just a lot more fun. But other than that, thank you for joining in today. I hope you enjoyed our session. I hope you enjoyed the AdventQRlendar. And if you need a little gift for anyone, maybe have a look and then make them your own custom-made AdventQRlendar with QR codes of your choosing.
Now I'm wondering, which content should I check out next? There is a lot
over the next
days and weeks until the 31st
Wow.
until the very last day of the year.
Nice.
I would now go ahead and search for everything. Let's go Control F and everything.net. Here is evolve.net microservice API. I'm definitely not want to miss that. But yeah, I'm
Yeah,
quite.
that sounds really good.
Perhaps there's also, is there a CSS 101 course?
Yeah.
I could make use of that.
Yeah, totally. What is up next? What's up today? Are there any?
So on the 3rd of December, we have deploy Azure NetApp files using
Ooh.
Terraform. I do not know what NetApp files are. I guess I will learn. And more Azure AI.
Teaching in
Ooh,
AI to lie at games. I love it. That
that's
sounds
interesting.
super interesting.
And also build and deploy Java applications with Azure and GitHub. Ooh, this actually, this would be. So we want to do this next year, but for our .NET Blazor application.
Cool. Well, loads of interesting content coming up today. Yeah. So I hope you have a wonderful experience. Yeah. And good luck to everyone who's. Well, I guess many people are not doing a live stream, so I guess they don't need the luck. They've already submitted us. But no, super interesting content. I hope you enjoyed as much as we do. Thank you so much again to the organizers. It's a great event. We're so happy to be part of it. And yeah, I guess thank you all for watching. Thanks for stopping by. And maybe see you next time.
We'll be back.